Great. Welcome everybody to this webinar on creating and delivering elevator pitches. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. We're very excited about this topic and we look forward to your comments and questions in the chat. So at any time during the presentation, please give us your comments, your questions. We will be asking those questions to the speaker as we go through. For those of you who have just joined us, please type into the chat what country you're from and what business you have. The HP Life team hopes that you'll find this webinar very interesting and useful, and you will get a copy of the slides after the webinar. I will send them out today. I am Debbie Ledbetter, and I'm a member of the HP Life team. Our speaker today is from Indiana University, which is one of our HP Life partners. We work with Indiana University to build and support entrepreneurs and small businesses in Myanmar and to improve business education and build capacity. HP Life is at the center of our work in Myanmar. So we're very excited to be working with them, and they give us some great speakers for our webinars. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm very pleased to introduce my esteemed colleague and our facilitator for today, Jim Vetter. In addition to being a great moderator, Jim is the Associate Director of Health and Technology for the Education Development Center, EDC, another HP Life partner. Jim, do you want to take it away?
Thanks so much, Debbie. And we're really excited to have folks here from really all over the world in so many different kinds of businesses. Students as well, people from small business centers. I think we're really going to find this a very valuable session today. And I'd like to introduce our presenter, that Nicolette Johnson. We're very, very honored to have you with us today. Nicolette is Associate Director of Graduate Career Services at the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. And there she works with MBAs who become leaders in consumer marketing. And consumer marketing is certainly a field where it's important to know how to pitch ideas well. So this kind of elevator pitch idea is really hugely important in there. And that Nicolette has been involved with many different companies, General Electric, Home Depot, JCPenney. She serves as a judge for Duke University's annual Startup Challenge, where participants are out there pitching their entrepreneurial ideas. And she owns her own business called Personality Freak. And Nicolette, I'd like to hear more about that at some point. So Nicolette, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited by everybody on. Lots of different backgrounds, different countries. So I think we'll have a lot of fun today within the next hour or so. And I see someone in the chat too is kind of taking away a little bit of my thunder, but I'll get to that in a second as well. So yeah, definitely happy to be here. As Jim has mentioned, I've heard a variety of pitches. We actually do a lot of pitches when it comes to MBA students and as they're talking to employers and they're interested in job opportunities. And also, I've done a lot around, reading business ideas for Duke Startup Challenge as well. So really enjoy this topic and hope that it'll be pretty interactive for you today as well. So throughout, I'll ask you lots of questions. So make sure you have your caffeine if that's your thing, and and pay attention and definitely looking forward to your feedback and your answers to the questions as we go along. So the first question that I have for you, and this is what someone actually typed in to the chat a few minutes ago, is we're talking about elevator pitches. Someone has their coffee now. That's cute. We're talking about elevator pitches. So where does the name elevator come from? So give me your thoughts. Go ahead and type in the chat. Where do you think elevator comes from in terms of why we call it an elevator pitch?
All right, everyone. So what's your best guess? Okay, climbing up. Yep. Tori is saying that it's because elevator rides are short. Gladys is saying a similar thing. Up and down in the elevator, Laura? Sure. Aha. So Mama G3 is saying that you got to be quick and to the point if you're going to be in an elevator. Just a short time to express your ideas. So it seems like, Nicolette, right, people have a pretty good sense that something's happening there in that short period of time. Is that right?
Right. So that is correct. So that is definitely what an elevator is. And that word elevator, in terms of elevator pitch, really comes from the period of time that it would take someone to go up a few stories in an elevator, or I guess a lift if you're in the UK. So that's really, a short period of time. And I like how people are writing lots of comments and around, explaining ideas, capture their attentions. You only have a few seconds. So that's definitely the case. So let's see. So when I think about an elevator pitch, it's really your commercial. So as you've mentioned already, it's brief and succinct speech about yourself, your idea, your product or service. Whatever you really want to have your elevator pitch around, and it should be 30 to 60 seconds. So that's really the amount of time. If you thought you'd jump on an elevator and go up, a few stories, that's about the max. 60 seconds is about the max amount of time that you'd have to go up an elevator. So it does need to be really short. Because of course, too, I know that in the U.S. and I'm sure in your country as well, sometimes attention spans are pretty short as well. So we want to make sure that it's brief. It needs to be persuasive, so really get people drawn in and interested in your idea. And also, it's a conversation starter. So and it's not, so in 30 to 60 seconds, more likely than not, you won't be able to particularly sell something to a person. They may not say in 30 seconds, okay, I'm sold. Let me give you $50,000 for your idea. But it is a conversation starter. So it's a conversation that will at least get the person interested, and where you can also ask to have more time with them to give them more detail about your product, service, or idea. So the idea here really is as a conversation starter and something that will pique their interest. So when I think about a commercial, the thing that comes to mind for me is a commercial that's in the U.S. and it's for a business called Jimmy John's. And Jimmy John's is actually a sandwich shop. It's a chain of really sandwich shops across the United States. And Jimmy John is really the name after the founder of the company. And in these and so the commercial that you typically see for Jimmy John's, you'll see that, someone's hungry, and usually they're grumpy because they're hungry. And then someone else orders Jimmy John's, either online or via phone. And then Jimmy John's appears within a matter of like 2 seconds. Jimmy John's is there, and they make it kind of funny and kind of humorous as well. And those commercials are pretty effective because it really gets across the key messages that the company wants to get across. One, they get across the name. Jimmy John, so you won't later say, well, what was that name again? You remember that. You know that they have sandwiches and in products like that. And then the biggest thing where they really provide unique value is that the person's hungry, and their unique value is that they deliver the sandwiches to them really, really quickly. So it's really that quick delivery that someone says very fast. So yeah, someone here is used to that they type in the chat. So yeah, so they give the product to them incredibly fast, and that's really their unique value that they provide. So in these really, I don't even know if they're really a full 30 seconds in terms of TV spots, but they probably are about 30 seconds. They get across their key messages. And it's like, wow, okay, I know what it is. I know the name of the product. I know what it is that they're selling, and I know that if I order them, they're really, really fast, which tends not to be the case for the competitors. So that's really, when you're thinking about your elevator pitch, you want it to be that clear and that succinct that someone knows automatically, what it is that you're selling and wanting to get across. And we'll talk about that in more detail about how to do that. So let's take a quick poll. So answering the poll that should pop up here, let me know, have you ever created an elevator pitch? And you can select, I believe we have a poll here, a yes or no.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So we've got a lot of folks who are answering right now. Just take a second to do that right now. But have you ever created an elevator pitch? And right now, it looks like we're a little ahead with people who have, but we're kind of split almost down the middle. All right. So if you haven't already, just to make that selection right now. Just have you ever created an elevator pitch? Just click on yes or no there. We have just a few people left who have not already voted. So go ahead and you have just another moment to do that right now. Okay. So Nicolette, it looks like about a 60-40 split here. We've got about 60% of people on with us today who have created an elevator pitch, and we've got about 40% who have not.
Okay, great. So we have a good number who have done it already. So, and in this presentation too, or in this webinar, I'm really going to cover a lot of the basics. So I think that those that haven't done it will gain some knowledge, and hopefully, if those that have already will able to do a couple things. One, you maybe gain something that you hadn't thought about, or two, you can actually contribute and kind of build on each other's knowledge throughout the webinar and what you type in the chat as well. So very interesting. So in terms of, so it sounds like half of you, a little over half, have created a pitch. Now, it sounds like that you're probably thinking about pitching more in the future. So tell me, type it in the chat, who would you like to pitch to in the future? So we can have an idea.
So that's interesting, Nicolette. So everyone, when you're thinking about making this kind of short sort of engagement, this kind of pitch, who would you do it to? We've got people saying investors. A number of people are interested in investors, but also pitching to clients. And Nicolette, we have some social entrepreneurs on here as well, who are talking about pitching to donors, CEOs and investors, sponsors. Okay. And Candy, when you're pitching to a small business owner, Candy, is that because you have a business to business, a B2B business? Okay. And Eddie is looking to pitch to everybody, all people. Great. Okay. So it looks like we've got sort of a range here.
Okay, well, great. So, which is perfect because really my next comment here is really pitches have many uses. So you can have pitch for your career, say that you're at a career fair somewhere or networking event. This what we'll talk about will give you a great foundation to be able to create a pitch for a career. And also potential customers is typically a very typical use for a pitch, where you want to talk to people about your business and get them bought in and interested in doing business with you. And then there's also the broad audience too. So in using a pitch in that regard, that could be a situation where, say you're at if you were selling something at, say, at a flea market or at somewhere at a convention, and media's there, and they're doing a little bit of a survey of the businesses there, and they walk up to you and say, what's your business? And you can on the fly be able to have a pitch that speaks to the broad audience that may be listening to you, say on television or radio as well. So pitches can be used in that regard. And then, of course, lots of entrepreneurs are interested in using pitches for their investment requests when they want to request funding or maybe mentoring, etc. So the foundation of pitches, or how you create them, are very similar across all four. I'd say the first three are probably the most similar, with the last one being a little more, investment requests being a little more complex. So those tend to, when you're truly doing an investment pitch, those tend to be a bit longer, and they can involve a variety of other things. So maybe talking a bit about the competitors, how much funding you're requesting, and also what that funding will be used for. And we can talk about that a little bit more detail as well. So let's talk about the key steps. So I think the earlier presentation said that there were 3 key steps, but I got kind of excited and actually added on a fourth for you as well. So the first 2 bullets that you see there, identifying the goal and determining the audience, that's really what you do before you develop your pitch. So you want to think about, what's the goal of my pitch? What do I want to accomplish? What outcome do I want from that pitch? And then also you want to think about the audience too. What audience will I speak to? So the goal really will impact mostly your step number 4 of what are you going to ask for at the end of your pitch. And then the audience, that tends to impact more of, the need, because you want to really cater to the need of what that audience is interested in, and kind of connect with them on an even a more emotional level in some cases. So, for example, when you think about the audience specifically, I have a business called Personality Freak, and it helps people understand their personality type so that they can perform better in their jobs. If they're high school students, they can better select their majors and know what careers to pursue and those kinds of things. So when I'm talking to high school students, that audience is more interested in having fun, learning something new about themselves. Of course, they're more interested in fun and future, and do I get to do what I'm passionate about? But if I'm talking to those high school students' parents, who are probably the ones who are going to be paying for my service, they're likely to, excuse me, they're going to be interested in what kids like and having fun as well. But they're going to be thinking probably more about, will my child be successful? Can she help my child pick a major so that they can finish school more efficiently, and even save me money at the end of the day by helping my child figure out what he or she wants to do. So those audiences would have different kind of interests and needs. So I would cater my elevator pitch differently depending on who the audience is. And then, so those are the kind of the foundation before you start your elevator pitch. And then here are the four things that the four steps that you want to take in your elevator pitch. So one, and we'll talk about each of these in more detail. Number one is who you are and what your product and service is. And this is really where you'll spend probably a little less, smallest amount of your time here talking about who you are and what your product and service is, but you'll definitely talk about that. The second thing that you'll talk about in your elevator pitch or need to include is what's the need for your product or service. And this is where you spend a lot of your time um, in your pitch. And this is where you really talk about, this could be talking to a specific customer, or you could be talking to a greater audience or have a greater need, but you'll definitely want to get that across. And then step 3 is including the success that you've had thus far. And then number 4 is really talking about next steps, and this is what we call the ask, where you'll actually request something from them to move forward. So let's talk about the first one. The first kind of foundational thing before you get into your pitch. What's the goal of your pitch? So if you're thinking about career, your goal, if you're talking to someone, oops, like it slid back. Sorry about that. Okay. So if you're talking about the goal of your pitch, the first part is, say if it's career, you may be wanting to obtain an interview, maybe your goal, or you want to have a future conversation with them to explore career opportunities. A potential customer, you may want to get a meeting with them, provide information, or even maybe receive information. Maybe you just want to learn more about their business or their industry so you can figure out how to better tailor your products and services to that industry or business. For a broad audience, you may just want to be building awareness. So if someone from the media came up to you at a fair or a convention or something and said, "Oh, what do you do?" You'd focus more on, you may want to build awareness out to the general population about, what do you do? Or maybe you want to drive them to your social media site or website, or maybe even you have an event or promotion, you want to drive them to that event or promotion. And then lastly, some of the goals that you may have for investment is really getting an opportunity to discuss funding with them, or maybe even getting, with someone who's a great business person and obtain some mentoring, and then maybe potential funding will come from that as well. So there are a variety of things here that you want to think about in terms of your goal when you're setting up or getting ready to create your pitch. And then the second foundational thing that you want to do before you create your pitch is to really think about your audience. So think about, what's that listener's main focus or interest? What drives them? What needs do they have? And what will grab their attention? For example, if you're talking with a group of investors, in that population, especially if it's a pitching event, that population will tend to they're used to hearing pitches. So there are a lot of cases, if you're standing, you may be standing up in front of them in more of a presentation style. And in that case, they're used to hearing pitches. You can be a bit more creative with those pitches. And sometimes those pitches are a bit more formal as well. So you have to know your audience that way. But say if you were talking to someone, you were selling a product or service to parents of kids at a baseball game, your pitch will most likely be, a bit more a bit more casual, and you may open with something that's more casual. Maybe you have ask about their opinion on something, or approach them in a more casual space. So you really have to think about who is the audience that you're talking with. So next, I have a quick true false question. So here's a question. So approximately 50% of your elevator pitch should focus on you and the work that you do. Is that true, or is that false? So approximately 50% of your elevator pitch should focus on you and the work that you do. Is that true or false? I'm seeing a pretty good split here, or a pretty even split so far here as well, Jim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really kind of neck and neck. And it looks like this is more people are thinking it might be false than are thinking it's true. Okay, so again, if you haven't already, just get your vote in there now. So it looks like actually this kind of split another 60-40. About 40% of the folks here think that about 50% of your elevator pitch should be on you and the work you do, and about 60% think that probably not. So what is it, Nicolette? What do you think?
Okay, so it's definitely, and I'm actually, yeah, I'm too. As Frank, okay, perfect. I'm looking at a webinar of someone there instead of the pitch. So yeah, so the truth really is that this is false. So 60% of you were hit the nail on the head, and 40%, I'm sure you'll have plenty of other things that will perspectives there that we'll definitely add and talk about through the presentation. So I say this is false because most of your pitch really shouldn't be focused on you and the work that you do, but it should really be focusing on the need that your product or service meets. So that's really the focus is. That person, they want to know who you are, because they want to know who is this individual talking with me, but they really want to know a lot about how does what you have or you do or your business, and how does that going to help meet my needs? So that's really where a big chunk of your time should be spent. I would say in terms of talking about you and the work that you do, when you're thinking of, quick 30 to 60-second elevator pitch, and that's really going to be a matter of, I'd probably say, maybe 15%, maybe 20% max of the conversation that you have or your pitch as well. So good. Well, thanks for jumping in so quickly on the true false. It's always interesting to see what everybody's thinking. Let's see here. So we talked a bit about the foundational things. So now we're jumping into the key steps. So step one really is talking about you and your product or service. So one, you want to start off with, in most cases, and we'll talk about how you can kind of alter these in a bit. But the first thing you want to talk about is who you are. So people typically want to know, what your name and your title, and then what's the name of your business pretty early on, just so they can put you in context of who you are, and then they want to know a bit about your idea, your product or service. So I know we talked a little bit earlier, but some of you were getting on kind of throughout the beginning. So quickly type in, what's your product or service? Maybe in a sentence or less. Tell us quickly what your product or service is in the chat.
Okay, so again, folks, just go ahead and just type right now. And Raghav, tell us what kind of product. So we've got web development services, IT, sales and assistance. We've got health promotion, commercial photography, graphic design, training, a fish product called Aban Sahat, that financial education to vulnerable populations. That's another social enterprise. Custom digitizing and embroidery. Creating software used for businesses to improve their bottom line. Event management, planning, educational site, a place for people to collaborate, a co-working platform? How about a roller skating track and fast food restaurant? An online educational portal, penetration testing, software, counseling for existing and prospective business owners from a small business development center, irrigation equipment. So, okay, got a range of products and services there, Nicolette.
Right, we definitely do. So that's going to be key as well. So after you talk about, and just tell them who you are, and that's quick. And my name is, my title, here's my business. You want to give them a brief overview of what your idea, product, or service is, depending on what you're pitching. And that should be, pretty, quick and easy and simple, because you don't want them to get bogged down. And you want to actually cover some of the key features and benefits. So if I were, for example, if I ran a dry cleaner, so a dry cleaning business, that's where, in the U.S. that we, have clothes that need to be cleaned professionally. If I had a business that did that for individuals, and I mean, the way that I would probably describe my my product or service would really be, I'm a dry cleaner. I dry clean clothing and dry clean and launder clothing using chemical-free products. So people know pretty quickly, okay, this person, does dry cleaning and laundering clothing, and they use chemical free products, which is kind of a little bit of probably a unique value as well. So it's simple. Someone quickly knows within, ideally, a sentence or two exactly what my product or service is. And then the thing, and this is really I would say this is the secret sauce, as we can call it. This is really around the need for your product, the need your product or service meets. So this is the biggest area that you really have to connect with the person you're talking with. Otherwise, I'll think, well, I hear you have a product or service, but I don't really understand why I need this. Or they may say, I don't even know why the world needs this. So you want to make sure that your product or service actually, or you communicate to them that your product or service actually fills a void for the consumer, or a pain point. Solves a pain point for them as well. And I always say target consumer, because working in marketing, we talk about, how do we market, all kinds of things, for us. How do we market a Hershey's chocolate to consumers? So I always think of the consumer, but that could be your customer or your audience, whoever you're targeting. But you really want to talk about the void that your product or service fills, or the pain point that it solves for the consumer. And then once you kind of figure out that void or pain point, then you want to provide information about, okay, does your product or service provide unique value that fills that void or pain point as well? So, for example, for me, I probably watch too much television sometimes, admittedly. Not too much crazy stuff, but too much television. And so I have a big, kind of flat screen television in my home. And recently, all of a sudden, after having it was about a year and a half old, the screen just goes blank, which isn't fun for me. Mm-hmm. So, but even though every year or so that happens to me for TV, so it's probably something I'm doing somehow. But anyway, so for me, if someone had a service where they said, well, I'm a TV repair company and I provide, quick, easy, quality TV repair, I would think, wow, that fills a void. I have a TV that needs to be fixed. I don't really even know, typically I don't even know who to really reach out to for those things. So if there's someone who has that, says, okay, the void, they filled my void. They have quick, easy, quality TV repair. I need TV repair. They have it. That's great. But then the thing that really sets them apart would be if they say that they provide their unique value, which is, we make it easy for you to schedule an appointment with us. We'll fix it on site, or we'll pick it up and return it to you, deliver it to you, fixed within 2 days. So for me, that would be the unique value that TV repair company provides versus others as well. So that's one example. Or another example, I was talking with Jim before, who is lucky to live in a place where they have lots of seafood, is for me, I'm living in the Midwest, and of course there's not a lot of ocean near where I live in the Midwest. And so for me, there's a bit of a void too for pizza that's out of the ordinary. Like if I go to a restaurant, a lot of it's meat pizza, not particularly gourmet pizza. So for me, the void would be, or that would be filled for me if there were such a business, would be a pizza place that has more unusual ingredients. And maybe they put shrimp on their pizza, or lobster, or salmon, and those kinds of things. So that's the void. And if there's a company that has that, that would be great because they fill a big void for me. And I think their unique value are probably a lot of other things they could add in there, like they use gourmet ingredients. Maybe they use all natural ingredients as well. And maybe they even say, oh, and we have wine in a nice atmosphere. To me, they're like, wow, that provides unique value. So those are just a couple of examples. But this is the key thing that you want to make sure that you're getting across is making sure that you're telling them or letting them know, that you fill that void or pain point that they have, and you do it in a unique way. This is the key, because a lot of times people will talk about who they are, they'll talk about their product and service, and then they'll try to get that person to buy it from them, but they really haven't done a great job in selling and how they fill a void and why do we even need them, and then how do they do that uniquely. So let's very, very quickly in the chat type in, what void does your product or service provide? Or fill, I'm sorry. What void does your product or service fill?
Marketing communications for business. Healthy entertainment for kids and families, as opposed to some unhealthy entertainment.
Real-time data recording.
Yeah. Oh, Frank is offering at his small business development center is offering business advising at no cost to the client. And Candy has got quality embroidering, so it doesn't do that kind of puckering that some embroidery does. Interesting. Okay, learning on the go. So you don't have to go to a classroom. You can get that there. Terry is saying that Terry needs to look at that and articulate it better. So good point. Okay. Andriotti is talking about healthy snacks, no MSG, and those snacks also support reducing malnutrition for children. Financial education without all of the hassle, that's high quality. Okay, and Lena's talking about most people don't know how to organize events. They hate to do it. They don't have enough time to do it. So Lena can do it for them. Okay, and are those the kind of voids or pain points that you're talking about?
Yes, definitely. It looks like there were several. I saw a few that were kind of putting their business or product in there, but I did see several that really showed what void they were trying to fill. Maybe a lot of unhealthy products out there or food, and people are trying to fill that. So that's perfect. Okay, well, very good. And then so make effective web portal. Okay, and then let's pretty quickly before we move on, tell me what unique value do you bring? So that's kind of a separate question, not just what void do you fill, but what unique value do your product, service, or idea bring to the market?
Okay, so I think a number of folks, I think you were already starting to give that for us. For some folks, you were starting to sort of position yourself. That okay, authenticity is one of the advantages. Okay, that Terry's virtual hours never expire. So if you get virtual hours with Terry, you can use them at any time. Okay, experience and confidence. Okay. And again, Hendriotti is saying that not only is this healthy shredded fish, is it nutritional, that is a good snack, but it also helps to benefit others, and no MSG. Free training, free resources, certified professionals.
Okay, very good. So let's move on to our third step, which is really something that people tend to leave out sometimes, but it really can be helpful. And this is around the success you've had thus far. So really being able to speak to, where you have had success, talk about, what have you accomplished? So maybe during this part of your pitch, you can talk about, oh, I have current clients. So if someone says, oh, wow, those are big clients, you're thinking, wow, those are big clients that person has. They must trust them. They must be doing a good job. Or you may talk about revenue. Yeah, sure. I already, had $2 million in revenue this year. People will go, wow, and this person's actually brought this out, brought this product to market, or they have the services going that they're actually creating revenue. Or even if it's a career, say if you're doing a pitch regarding your career, interested in opportunities, being able to really talk about the past accomplishments that you've had, not experience necessarily, even though experience can help. But say in marketing, if someone says that I have 10 years of experience in marketing, that's nice, but doesn't really show. That's not really an accomplishment. That accomplishment would be more of I've been able to actually I've launched five brand campaigns, or I've created 5 brand campaigns for Nestle or Unilever that resulted in XYZ results for the client. Those kind of things. Those are accomplishments. And this really reinforces credibility as well. So if you've ever seen, I don't know if you watch many shows or seen many people pitch, but one show that I tend to watch in the U.S. is Shark Tank. And Shark Tank really talks about, and of course, Shark Tank is a, I guess you could call it really a reality show, but it's a show where you have a group of investors and people come in to pitch their entrepreneurial ideas. Someone loves Shark Tank. Yeah, me too, Deborah. And they pitch their ideas to the investors, and in the hopes that they'll get funding by one of these, oh, great. Shark Tank is in Portuguese as well. Wonderful. So so they pitch the ideas to the investors in hopes of getting funding. And one thing that you tend to see is the investors are listening to the person pitching, but the moment that someone says, I'm listening, that someone says, well, I have orders from Walmart. Or in some case, they may say, "Oh, I have order. My product is in Neiman Marcus's across the country." The Shark Tank investors, you can see they all of a sudden perk up. Even if they weren't incredibly enthusiastic about the idea in the beginning, they tend to perk up a bit and say, "Wow, okay, this person is they're in stores already," which gets them excited. So I suggest when you're talking about your idea, if you've had success so far, let people know that, because they'll get excited. They'll get excited by knowing that other people have liked your product or your service, or other people have bought into it, so they're more likely to do it. That's almost like what we say, kind of a little bit of getting on the bandwagon, but actually being able to speak to your success will reinforce your credibility, and other people's will want to give you a chance as well. And then, so you really want to give them that reason to believe in you. Excuse me. So that's definitely a key step. And that's something that you see sometimes and sometimes not. And if you haven't really had the success to speak of that you can talk to, this may not be, this may be a step that you may want to skip over temporarily until you build up more. But typically you can come up with something that you've been able to do, even if it's working through some volunteer things that you can actually get recommendations from. And then the last big step is really called, really the next steps, and what I'm calling the ask. So the last step, after you've talked a bit about, you told them about you and your product or service, you've talked to them about the need your product or service meets as well, and then you've talked about the success that you've had, you really want to be able to close by asking for something. And it doesn't mean necessarily asking for the sell. Don't say, "Oh, are you ready to buy my products?" And in 30 to 60 seconds, it's quite possible they haven't had enough information, or they feel a little bit overwhelmed. They want to think about it, but you at least want to ask for something. So that could be as simple as asking for consideration. Say if you're talking about a job opportunity, ask for them to consider and give them your information. More likely, probably the best thing out of the three would be to ask for an opportunity to discuss in more detail. Yeah, you could definitely ask them, I'd love to talk with you more. And once you give them all the other information, I'd love to schedule a few minutes with you to give you a little more detail or learn more about your business and see how I could potentially help. Or talk to you about how I've been able to help my clients so far as well. And then so talk about that. And then also it could be some cases you're just going to provide business card or other marketing material at the end to close as well. So if and this ask can be a little bit different depending on the type of pitch that you're doing as well. So if you're asking, say, for an opportunity to talk with someone about a job opportunity or an opportunity to talk with a potential customer, you may just want to ask for a short period of time. Maybe the ask will be small. So maybe you'll say, "Oh, I'd love to schedule maybe 20 minutes with you to talk a little bit more." So they'll think, well, 20 minutes isn't bad. And they probably will already assume that it may take us longer than 20 minutes to discuss it. But they'll think that, they'll think that 20 minutes is not a whole lot to ask. So they'll likely give you that amount of time. So you can go a little bit small and hoping to have a little bit more. But then if it's, say, an investment request, so you're doing a pitch in front of investors, then you typically don't want to go small and ask for less. You want to be pretty realistic about what you're asking for. So typically if you're doing a more formal investment pitch, then you're going to be asking for a specific amount of money for them to give in your business. So you want to be realistic. You don't want to undersell it or oversell it, because once they dig into the numbers and start asking you questions, your credibility could be lost there. So that's really where we ask. So far, have those four questions, those four steps, do they seem pretty reasonable?
So what do you think, everybody? Yep. Deborah thinks yes. Good. Yep. Okay.
All
Arturo.
right.
Yep. Good.
All right. Well, very good. So we talked in a bit of detail through each of the four steps. So if we put it all together, definitely remember that you want to think about the first two bullets first. What's the goal of my pitch? What do I want to what outcome do I want from the pitch? And then who's my audience? Because of course that audience really makes a difference, especially when you're talking about the need part. You really want to, because you want to figure out what's the need of the audience, and you want to be able to tailor your pitch to their needs. So that's really important. And the goal really goes to the goal of the pitch really goes to more the ask or the next steps as well. And then the four true steps are talking about who you are and what your product and service is. And of course, that's going to be the shortest amount of time in your pitch that you'll spend in your pitch. And then you want to talk about what's the need for the need your product or service meets. What need your product or service meets. And that's the most important part. And remember too, there's really two parts to that. So that's really you want to talk about kind of that void and be able to help meet their need. And you also want to talk about the unique value and that it brings as well. Because if you talk about the void and my product meets this need, there could be other businesses that meet that need as well. So you want to go one step further and explain the unique value that you bring. So that's kind of even a competitive, thought there is, okay, I meet the need, and there could be others that meet the need, but I'm unique compared to my competitors because I bring this unique value. So that's really the important part there. And then icing on the cake is really to talk about this is the success that I've had so far in doing this. And some people alone on that credibility will say, okay, I'll give you a chance. If other people are doing it and you've had success, I'm going to trust that you can do a good job. And then of course, the last step is really around the next steps or the ask. And that's really where you're going to be able to get some forward traction with that individual or whoever you're pitching to. Because if you don't get in the next steps or the ask, you're leaving an opportunity on the table where you could actually be moving that conversation forward to to another conversation and a potential sale or future relationship. So you don't want to leave that step out as well. So real quick, what I thought I would do is I will go through, just to kind of sum it up and pull all together, a couple of quick pitches. One takes each one should probably take about 50 seconds or so a piece. So one is one that I put together. Oops, something happened there. One is that I put together with getting a little creative with slides there. Well, I don't know what's going on with the slides, but anyway, I'll go through as we're figuring that out. I will go through.
I'm wondering, can our AV specialist help get the slides back into the regular size there?
So the two pitches that I'll go through, one is really around career. So I created one as if I were interested in talking to someone about a career services position at an MBA program. So we'll do a quick career one, and then we'll do a quick one that I actually kind of scribed from a Shark Tank episode, as well as a quick example of an investor one. So if you let me go back one slide if you don't mind. Oh, that one, yeah. So the first one for career is, I'm Nicolette Johnson. I'm Associate Director of Career Service at the Kelley School of Business. I know that you have a need for a career coach to help your MBA students obtain the career of their dreams. In many cases, career services professionals and universities don't have firsthand experience in the types of companies that students are seeking, resulting in a gap in knowledge and unnecessary guesswork. And that's where I can provide value. I have 16 years of experience in corporations, and not only that, my experience has been in human resources, the group that is in charge of recruiting and hiring practices. Having had an inside view, I can clearly and quickly help prepare students for opportunities and gain a competitive advantage. Additionally, I have an MBA too, which gives me perspective on what it's like to be an MBA student, better preparing me to help students from an MBA point of view. I've had success in helping students with their career strategies, reaching a 100% placement rate for MBA internships this summer, and receiving glowing feedback from incoming MBAs that I've helped prepare for a recent conference. I would love to schedule a 20-minute conversation to discuss how I may assist you in reaching your goals for the career services organization. So that's one example of a quick kind of career one. If you're talking to someone, especially you're talking face to face and letting them know that you're really interested in this opportunity. And what I really talked about there is who I am. So again, my name and title. I talked a bit about their need, talked about the unique value that I bring. And I tend to even like to say, this is the value that I bring. And then success I've had, and then really asking for that conversation. So that's an example of one that I would potentially use for a career, if I were interested in a career conversation or pitch. And then here's one that I actually transcribed from a Shark Tank episode, and it's for an individual or for a man who was actually owned a baby back rib business, and he was seeking money from the sharks. And I'll try to sound like him a little bit. No, I won't try too hard. So it's like, hi, I'm Al Bubba Baker from Avon, Ohio, and owner of deboned baby back rib steaks. I'm seeking $300,000 in exchange for 15% equity in my company. And this is my lovely daughter, Brittany. She's going to make you shark's ribs in the microwave in 2 minutes. Now, I played a little football in the NFL for 13 years. That was my job. But barbecue is my passion. Sadly, I married a woman who doesn't like ribs because they're too messy. So I vowed to find a way for my wife to be able to enjoy ribs. But how do you make ribs less messy? You take the bones out. After 20 years, I found the perfect method, and the deboned baby back rib steaks were born. We are the only people who have removed the bones from an actual slab of rib, leaving the meat intact so that everyone can enjoy ribs with a knife and fork. Our deboned baby back rib steak is not pieces of meat formed in the shape of a rib. Boneless meats are the way of the future, and the future is now. Make no bones about it, sharks. It's time for some ribs. So that's just one example. You can always see that one on, and it's more impactful live. More impactful live than me saying it. You can always search for that on Shark Tank. But that one, so it was a bit different. So from an investment perspective, he told who he was. So he gave his name, told him he was the owner of the business, and then he actually asked up front, which was often typical. in investment request, he asked, this is what I'm seeking, $300,000. So he put that up front in there. He talked about the need. So he brought his personal example in about his wife not being able to eat ribs because they were too messy. So he said there's a need for ribs that you can eat with a knife and fork, essentially. And then he talked about his his unique value. He says we're the only ones. So he's really looking at his competitive landscape amongst all the other businesses out there, and saying we're the only ones who have removed the bones from the slab of ribs as well. So, and the only thing that he didn't leave out is his success. So he had actually sold some. He had already sold some of his product, but he didn't really mention that success that he had. But that came out in the questions later, and also found out that he had patents on not only on actually on the product as well as the process. So that really impressed them as well. So that gives you at least a little bit of a flavor of how some people have put these together and really covered those key areas: who they are, the product or service, the need that they're meeting, the success they've had, and then also really asking for what they want. That's right. Yeah, Damon John, he did invest in it. That's right, Jim. All right. So that is it. So what questions do you have?
Okay, so now is the time that folks, I know we've been seeing some, I have some questions that I've recorded that folks have been typing in, Nicolette, as you've been going. But now's the time that, what are the questions you have, everyone, as you're thinking about making your own pitches to the important people for your business? What are some of the challenges you're thinking about, the questions you might have about how to do it well? And Nicolette, actually, the first question I'd like to ask is one of mine. So you've given us a really good framework about what should go in an elevator pitch, what those kind of components are, how you make sure that you're focusing on the most important points, what the need is of the person you're talking with, and what your unique value is. But I'm wondering, what about when I actually get in there to deliver that pitch? That I've got I've got the idea of what I want to communicate, but if I'm actually there, I've just a few seconds to get that attention of my audience and really interested in them in what I've got to say. Do you have any recommendations on how to do that?
Sure. So I would say, one part about it really is the passion. So really showing that you're passionate about it. Like when I talked about the baby back ribs guy, he was really into it. Like, I love barbecue is my passion. So that goes over well in terms of getting them excited about the your product or service. So I think that's key. And then you have to figure out too. You have to think about what's your style and what works well with your style as well. So you may want to do a variety of things. From you could start off with. It depends too. So if you're in front of a group and it's more presentation style, you could give a variety of things. You could give an interesting fact to really open it up that's related to your business. You could open up with some sort of story, a little bit of a story or a question as well. So there are a variety of ways that you can do something to really get their attention as well. But I would say to be careful in not going too far outside of your comfort zone in doing that, because it could come across as very inauthentic, or you're trying too hard. So you definitely want to make sure that it's something, because some people are naturally funny and they can do that and make that work. So you want to do something that really fits your capabilities and your wheelhouse from a presentation perspective.
Okay, so really putting that kind of passion out there. Why is this? Why do you believe that you can really bring something that's special, that's important, and really doing that in a way that's really true to you, that not trying to be somebody else in the process. Sounds like.
Right, exactly.
So a question we got from Stanley was wondering that in this kind of pitch, if you have different products, should you talk about just one, or should you talk about the kind of the various products and the needs that those various products might meet?
Well, I think that depends a lot on who you're talking with and what products would meet their needs. So if you're talking to a customer and all of say all of your products would meet their needs, then you could you could likely summarize that somehow and talk about how, maybe that suite of products will, whatever their need is, maybe it makes their life easier, or maybe you're a one-stop shop or something like that. And that makes their lives, it brings value to them because it makes their lives easier, simpler, more consistent, more streamlined. If that fits, then sure, you could talk about kind of your suite of products. But if you're talking to a group or one product in particular is more suited to them or really will meet their need, I would talk about just that one product. Because you can always talk later about other products, but I would really go for the product that you believe would resonate with them, essentially.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like sort of figuring out, as you talked about in the beginning, the preparation, figuring out that kind of that clear message that really matches what the needs are of that audience.
Right. Because if you put too much in there, then it'll get really fuzzy and foggy, and they'll stop listening, and they won't really understand how that connects with them and why they'd be interested.
Interesting. So Raghav is wondering that when we're thinking about kind of making these pitches and making them compelling, that Raghav is wondering what's most important, the product or the way we present it?
Well, I would say, Jim, do you have something else?
Oh, no, just that seems like a classic question, isn't it?
Right. So I would say it's more about how you present it, right? So, I mean, the product is always important, and you don't want to sell someone something that you can't deliver on. So I make sure that your product or service is solid, because the last thing you want is you did this great presentation, they use your product and they're disappointed, because then they'll talk with other consumers, or they may, go on social media and talk badly about your product. So you don't want to sell someone a product or service that doesn't meet their needs, or sell them something that really isn't true. So you want to make sure that your product or service is good. But then I would say, with that in mind, assuming your product or service is good, the presentation is key. Because when you think of all the, say, advertising, especially in the U.S., that goes on, whether it's television or newspaper or social media, there's a lot of advertising, and often people are selling a lot of the same stuff, right? I used to work in retail for a good period of time, and so various retail organizations, and some of them are selling the same kind of things. If you're thinking about a dress, for example, a black dress that they say every woman should have, which I probably need to work on because I don't. But so there are a lot of businesses that'll sell a black dress, but the ones that market theirs the best or market their brands the best are the ones that are going to get the sales. So your presentation is, I would say, as long as your product is solid and that wouldn't be disappointing, your presentation really matters a whole lot more, because you're going to you want to get, that emotional appeal. You want to connect with them and let them, make sure they understand how your product fits their need. So the presentation is key.
That makes sense. You've got to have something that's really worth offering, and then you've got to present it in a compelling way. So Admiral is asking about, when we're thinking about making this kind of pitch, that is it possible to adapt these steps when you're working with a volunteer organization to get support for a kind of a nonprofit or volunteer work?
Sure. So you can adapt these steps really in any scenario. And so I went in order of kind of who you are, what product or service, your need, your success, your the kind of the ask or the request. So you can adopt the order with really any of them. It really just suits who the audience is, and even your style to some degree. Like, some people may be better asking a question or talking about the need before they talk about even what their product or service is. So you can adapt these steps in a variety of ways to meet the need. And I would suspect that, if you're talking to donors, I think that you have to, of course, I think that takes even more of an emotional appeal. So really being able to talk about that need in a compelling, maybe more empathetic, emotional for nonprofit would work as well. But I think the steps are pretty solid, but you may want to change the order depending on your style, your audience, in the presentation or pitch that you're doing. And then I think for nonprofits, that probably that need piece is key.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm noticing, Debbie, that we're just right about at the top of the hour. So as we're thinking about, so Nicolette, thank you so much. That really amazing that what you've had a chance to share with us today. That so folks, when you're figuring out what you are going to do next, that just remember that on HP Life eLearning, that there are many resources that fit into exactly what Nicolette was sharing with us today. That like unique value proposition, the course around how do you really figure out how to present what is unique about your business, just what Nicolette was talking about. That marketing benefits versus features related to that, effective presentations. So that's one way to keep engaged, to be able to keep learning. And also remember that the community forums are there, also available for you. That we will, in the course of about a week or so, we will take the slides, recorded presentation, will be up on HP Life eLearning. You can see the recorded presentation in the mentoring area, sort of right near where you went in order to register for this webinar. And as you're experiencing success, if you've been having success in your business, in your work, after using HP Life eLearning, just type us into the chat and let us know. So go ahead and do that now. If you've been finding that your business has been successful as a result or after you've been involved with HP Life eLearning, let us know, because we're looking to feature some businesses that we have over 500,000 users from around the world. And we'd love to be able to tell the story of your success. And you can go actually onto the website as well, onto lifeglobal.org. In the success story area, there's a form that you can go to and just type your success story into there. We would love to know more about that. So again, Nicolette, and folks, if Raghav, if you wanted to stay on after, I can have a little chat with you about your question. And Richard wants to know when the next webinar is coming. That we will definitely, you'll be on the newsletter list. So we don't have the date yet, but once the next one is happening, we will definitely send out an invitation to everyone. And you will also receive probably today or tomorrow an email with a very brief survey asking about this webinar. And you know that any time that you're putting out something to the public with your product or service, getting that kind of feedback from your customers, in this case, you as participants, is hugely important. So when you receive that email, please do take just a moment to fill out that survey, give us your feedback. And again, thank you so much, Nicolette, for everything that you shared today. And thanks all of you for joining us. And we'll look forward to seeing you right on the discussion forums at HP Life eLearning.